All right, now this is a topic that I have been asked about a fair amount, and today we're going to get into it. Kree-ga, bundle up. Welcome back to the channel, everybody, and welcome to the library. As you guys know, we talk Conan here, and we talk Conan and Robert E. Howard a lot. So it's kind of strange that here we are, issue 4 of Savage Sword of Conan by Titan Comics being out, and I haven't really talked about it at all. And there's a reason why I haven't talked about it, and we'll get to that in a bit, but this has been a topic that I have been asked about a fair amount, so it's finally time. And I'll tell you what triggered the point in time where I said, yes, we're doing it now. It's this. That's right. Titan Comics is issuing a trade paperback of the first 3 issues of Savage Sword of Conan. It's supposed to be released to us in November of 2024. Now, as of the recording date of this, that's a couple months down the road for us. So we have some time to decide, do I want to buy this or not? Well, I've held off on my discussion of Savage Sword of Conan. So today what I want to do is actually get into that for you guys. Let's talk about these. I'm going to talk through issues 1, 2, and 3 today, and I'm going to talk about some of the really cool things that I found within there. At the end of this, I'm going to talk about a particular challenge that I've found with these books, which is kind of an odd one. And then we're going to talk about whether I'm going to be buying this trade paperback or not. Now, spoiler alert right now, we are going to be looking at images today of covers, which really isn't any spoilerish type stuff to it. I'm going to be talking about stories that are within these, but I'm not going to give you guys any information about what happens in the stories. But we will be looking at some pretty cool art. And at the end of the day, that art's already out there on Instagram, Facebook, Reddit, all these other places. So really, I shouldn't be spoiling anything for you. But you know, maybe if you don't want to see anything that's inside these books, you probably want to skip this all the way to the end then and skip these middle chapters. We'll chapterize it for you to make it easy for you while you're jumping your way on through. So without any further ado, let's first get into, well, why didn't I discuss these things yet? All right, so let's get into this. Why haven't I discussed this thing yet? Well, I'll tell you, it's actually come up a couple times in emails. They've come to me and they said, well, Tennessee Fat's like, you're a Conan guy, you're a Savage Sword of Conan guy in particular, like, why haven't you discussed this yet? What's going on? Do you hate it? Like, what? Okay, let's put all of our minds at ease right now. I did not hate this at all. Not at all, not at all. I was sort of whelmed, underwhelmed, overwhelmed. I had a variety of emotions when I was going through this, but at the end of the day, I was really impressed with everything that came out of these books. The issue for me is, when I'm doing these reviews for you guys, I want to make sure I'm covering an entire arc. You'll notice when I do my reviews of, like, for example, Titans arc number 1, I'll put a link to it up over there, I gave it to you in an arc. When I gave you the review of Titan Comics arc number 2, I'll put a link to it up over there. That was the arc. The reason why I do these is because I don't want to leave you guys hanging. One of the things that I couldn't stand back when I was reading monthly books as a teenager, and this took me a fair amount of time in my old age to actually get used to now, is the fact that I have to wait. I read a piece, but it doesn't finish. It leaves you with that little wetted tongue where you're sitting there going, oh, really? I gotta wait another month to get the... But you do. And it's worth it at the end of the day, most of the time. But sometimes you get surprised and it's not. So when I'm doing a story arc review for you guys, and that's not what we're doing today, but when I'm doing a review saying this is good, bad, or ugly, I'm giving it to you based on, well, the entirety of whether it was good, bad, or ugly. Those of you who know, you guys who have read this, you over there in the corner, you know there's one particular story here that went through parts 1, 2, and 3 in the first 3 issues. So before we could do this, I had to finish reading parts 1, 2, and 3. Now, as of the recording date of this, part 4 is out. It's already out there, but I am not getting into any discussion of the Black Stone. I'm not getting into any discussion of anything that was in Conan, Savage Sword of Conan number 4. We're just put that to the side. That is a topic for another day. Back in the day, we would call this on the riverbank, and we would say, but that's another story. We'll talk about that later. For now, though, we're talking about these 3. And today I'm glad to say, all right, well, we've got part 1, which is issue 1, which had a fantastic story in the front, some other material, and then this part 1 of the thing that went on, book 2, which did the same thing, and book 3, which did the same thing again. So today we're going to go through those. Now again, I'm not going to be telling you guys what happens in these stories, but I am going to be showing you some pages. So, you know, be prepped for this, okay? All right, with all that out of the way, let's get into book number 1. All right, so issue number 1, let's talk about this thing right now. I'm going to put the image up over there, all right? So we're just going to leave it there for a while. You guys can just enjoy it, explore the space, do whatever you want to do with it. All right, here's the deal with this thing. This was a real powerhouse issue, and it did a bunch of things in here that caught my attention that made me actually have to stop reading it at several points in time, get up and walk away, and then come back. And again, nothing to do with what was actually produced within this. This is more of a me thing than anything else. What really blew me away right off the bat, though, was the intro and the foreword on this thing by Roy Thomas. Now, those of you who know, and you know Conan, you know Roy Thomas is the guy that was literally the Conan guy at Marvel for, well, forever. And quite frankly put, that carried that title and the IP really into what we have today. As much as I'd love to say Robert E. Howard did some fantastic work, and he did, don't get me wrong, the prose genre was not enough to carry Conan into the mass cultural item that he is today without the comics, the movies, and everything else that went with it. In my mind, the comics, and really the Conan the Barbarian comic, that color comic, was the one that carried that the most. So having Roy come into this right off the bat and say, okay, here's what we're doing, guys, and I'm very excited about this, and hinting that he's got some stories that are going to be coming up in the future, was one of those ones where I went, ooh, you don't say. Well, sign me up. That was a really nice opening on this, and it really drew back, for those of us who are old school sort of Conan fans, and really made us sink in and go, oh, okay, this is legit. Roy's on board. We got it. We're good to go. That was followed up by a wonderful story, and this is the Dragon Horde, and I'm not going to go too much into this one here, but I'll tell you, you know what I'm going to do here? Let's get an image up on the screen here, because I think this thing speaks to itself, and I think we really need to look at this right now. Okay, so what we're looking at here is a splash panel. Now, it's not a big 2-page one, and it's one where I know the art's already been released out there, and if you really were looking for it, you have already found this darn thing, so really no spoilers on this thing. This is a story right off the bat with this Dragon Horde thing, which is by this John Arcudi guy and Max Van Fafner. Again, if I'm killing these names, you guys feel like down below and just let me know. And if, by the way, if you creative guys out there that actually worked on this book or watching this video, well, thank you. And if I'm asking your name, I apologize for doing that. When you're looking at this panel, though, this is one that really caught me off guard because it made me immediately step back and go, ooh. Because some of you may or may not noticed, we've done some videos on this channel about Jack Kirby, Stan Lee, you know, some of the early stuff that he did there. In fact, if you've been really observant, you'll see that there's a book right over here that's kind of important and speaks a fair amount to that relationship between Jack Kirby and Stan Lee. We're big Kirby fans on this channel. And one of the things that Jack Kirby did a lot, is particularly in early Fantastic Four, I believe it was also in some Silver Surfer books, and the other chances when he had a chance was he brought in the Kirby collage effect. And the Kirby collage effect was where he did photographic backgrounds to things or used photographic textures within the actual comic panels. Now that I've said that, I'm going to put that image back up here again. Let's take a look at it. We'll just put it on the side over here though, okay? Am I the only person that's possibly questioning and saying, is there photographic textures in this? Now, I don't know a lot of Max Van Fafner's work, and I'll be honest about that. Unfortunately, I have not run into a lot of it as of yet, and I blame most of that on me as opposed to anything that he's done. Because I went and I checked what he's done. He's done a lot of stuff. It's actually really impressive stuff. But is this art style actually bringing in some of the Kirby collage? Now, again, Kirby collage, do not think that Jack Kirby created this technique. Using photos in comics is something that predates that whole Fantastic Four schlemazel. But I'll tell you, it's something that was, in my mind, really a fantastic technique that really jumped to me and popped off the page. And if that's what I'm seeing here, either A, the actual artistic talent of Max Van Fafner is that good that it actually is making me think, holy crap, is this photography? Number one, again, A1, we're going to use those interchangeably here. But number two, is it actually a photograph? Those of you who know, if you've seen anything about this and you've looked into it, down below, let me know. Let me know what you think about that, because honestly, this was one that just jumped. The story was actually really, really good. I enjoyed the writing on this, and you know, it's a nice little single piece. But I will say this, the one thing that I hope will come in the future, and again, might just be a me thing, but there's a certain character that survived that entire story with Conan. I'm not going to say who, I'm not throwing any spoilers here, but that particular character, I would like to see a little more of that. If there's any way we could do more of that in the future, that'd be great. Just somebody who wants to listen to Young Tennessee Fats on that, feel free. Go ahead and consider that a vote to yes, do that going forward. Okay, now there were a bunch of other really cool things within this story and within this book, and I'm not going to ruin those for you. I'm going to leave those in there because they were smaller things within the overall context and page count, but they were pretty powerful things. So set them aside, if I talk to them too much here, if I show them, I'm just going to spoil them, so I'm not going to do it. The last thing that was within this, though, was the first part of that 3-part story arc, and that is a Solomon Kane story. Now, we've talked about Solomon Kane on this channel before briefly, but we haven't really delved into it too much. When I did my video where I said, well, these are the Hyborian Age characters that we're seeing in the Howardverse, and I'll put a link to it up over there, I talked to Solomon Kane on a cursory level. Solomon Kane did a lot of comics appearances, let's just put it that way. So the issue is the majority of those were in Savage Sword. There's a beautiful essay in here by Jeff Shanks, and he did a great job talking about the actual history of Solomon Kane. And I would encourage any of you to take a look at that if you really want to know more about the history of Solomon Kane, because he wasn't just a guy that was in that random movie a while back. He's been a character of Robert E. Howard's for a long time. And he's one of Robert E. Howard's first published major successful characters. And again, I'm not going to steal Jeff's thunder on that. Feel free to read that essay at your leisure, because really, it's worth it. But this story is kind of an interesting one because you have this juxtaposition that they did, and it was Patch Zurcher who wrote this and who was the artist in it. And I'll tell you, this beautiful juxtaposition within the character of Solomon Kane, again, not spoiling it, but there was a real challenge within Solomon's mind about how he's going to solve this problem. And it got down to the very core of who he is. Now, this might be slightly spoiling, but I will tell you this much. They did a beautiful job drawing in Welsh mythology and folklore into this. Now, Welsh mythology and folklore, for anybody who's looked into it, is a phenomenally interesting topic. There is a ton of stuff out there, and it's really cool stuff. I'm just going to leave that at that. For anybody who's interested, take some time and just, on the Google, take a little bit of time, learn yourself a little bit about Welsh mythology, and you're really going to enjoy the draw in this particular story, because it's not just going to end here. This is the part that now carries into issues 2 and issue 3. We're just going to stop there. That's issue 1. Let's get into book 2. Book 2. Let's talk about this thing here, because this one was an interesting one, and, well, it was interesting for a variety of reasons. The big piece at the front of this one was a story by Jim Zub and Richard Pace. Now, Richard Pace, I may have mentioned him on this channel before. I cannot remember if I did or did not. You know what I'll do? I'll show an image of one of his covers that he did on, I believe it was, yes, it was the Cimmerian, over here for you guys, to give you some context of the sort of stuff that this guy has done. This story was this wonderful, oh, you know what? We're going spoiler free here, okay? The bottom line is, this one had some really interesting character development for Conan. Now, character development for Conan in an anthology story that's something that's shorter isn't something you often see. Unless they threw it into the original Savage story where what they were doing was an adaptation of one of Robert E. Howard's pieces. The majority of the things that happened to Conan weren't pieces that were real learning pieces or growth pieces. They were just adventurous pieces where this happened, that was results, and Conan wrote off with X, Y, or Z. It was rather an interesting formula, and it worked rather well. But this story is actually an interesting one, because what it does is it draws back to, and I'm not going to spoil this too much, it draws back to Conan's desire as a character to pass on knowledge, to pass on what he's got. Literally the job of Conan being the teacher, the father figure, the individual that's out there actually spreading his knowledge and his way of life on to others. And this was referenced, and rather coolly, in the Savage Avengers series, which I've already done a review for, and I'll put a link up to it over there. That's really a fun story if you take the whole, this is outside of Conan canon, and set it aside. But if you look at the solution they came up with at the end of that story, no spoilers, it's one where Conan is literally out there raising an individual. This story actually has Conan in a recovery position and is somewhat vulnerable, but at the end of this, he's working towards raising another individual. This is where you're getting into the older King Conan stories. Like if you read, I believe it was the last round of Marvel's King Conan, which was a Jason Aaron set, only 6 issues within that, but within that there was a lot of discussion between Conan and Khan, and the growth of Khan, and Conan, the father and the teacher, being so proud of what Khan did. This story really harkens into that. It draws into, hey, Conan wants to actually pass on more. Conan wants to be more than just a wandering person. And it gives you that glimpse, that beautiful little glimpse to the layers that are beneath that surface character of Conan that was really well done. I enjoyed that story, and honestly, I think most people who actually pick this up will as well. The Richard Pace art, it was very good. I know some people have actually commented on this channel saying, hey, listen, after I saw that, I'm now collecting everything by that guy. It's incredible stuff. So really, no spoil. I'm not going to spoil any of the art on that one. You want to see it, you go pick up that issue, or maybe check out the last chapter of this video where we're talking about the trade paperback. Yeah, maybe you want to do that. Second piece of this, though, continued on with that whole Solomon Kane piece. Now, I will say this about the Solomon Kane piece that was in issue number 2. This one, to me, was almost like a filler story between A and B. And then we're talking about B here. We're talking about issue number 3 and the epic conclusion. There was definitely material that had to happen in the middle here, which talks to what Solomon Kane had to resolve himself to and the knowledge that he had to get through the challenge. But I actually wonder, I look at this and I wonder, could that have actually been done with a little bit more page count in issue 1 and a little more page count in issue 3, and then it didn't need to be a third chapter sitting in the middle? It could have been done in either way. I like the actual extra material because I really enjoyed the art style that came with this, and it was visually very appealing. So to me, I was like, yeah, it could be done this way. I like this, but some other people might have thought that dragged a bit. But to me, I give that a thumbs up. All right, let's get into book number 3. Now, book number 3 here was the wrap-up for me. For me, this is the one where I actually got that last chapter of that 3-part story. So you knew when I was going into this book, I was already pretty excited. So here's, again, following the model we've seen thus far in issues number 1 and 2, what you end up here with is a big story at the middle, there's some filler pieces, and then you've got that last piece at the end. We'll talk about the patch searcher piece at the end of this particular segment. The first section in this, though, wow. Just wow. This was the Carrie Nord and Frank Thierry story, Wolves in the Tundra. And I gotta tell you, I'm gonna show, warning to you guys, I'm gonna show an image of one page up over here. This story, to me, was the piece, the winning, knock it out of the park piece for Savage Sword Conan numbers 1, 2, and 3. Don't get me wrong. The first 2 big pieces, that Maximum Fafner piece, that was genius. I loved that. And when we got to that whole piece with Jim Zub and Roger Pace in the middle, again, love the story, love where it was going. This one, however, for me, was the top piece. This thing was phenomenal. Now, that image I showed you, and the reason why I showed you that image, I'm going to reference that when we get to that chapter at the end, but I did want to show you that so that you can remember that. I'm going to show it to you again, actually. Go take a look at that. Remember that image, because we're going to get to that piece later on when we get to a little bit of wrap up here. Then what I really liked about this story was it took the Conan character in really a fun and exciting way into an adventure that you wouldn't have expected. And it led through a couple things. There's actually a couple throwbacks within this story if you look really carefully at the writing, and you can see it. There's a throwback in here to the Goodfellas. I thought that was really clever and really well done. There's a throwback in here to, actually, the goof at the end of this one is almost a Road to Morocco type story, which was kind of cool. I enjoyed that. But the other thing that was in here that was really, really neat was it actually drew back to an early Solomon Kane story that was republished in the Del Rey version of the Horror Stories of Robert E. Howard, which is up over here in the library, where, well, I'm not going to spoil it, but there's clearly a throwback to that. Now, whether that was done intentionally or not, but the similarity is really well done there, and it's really well drawn in. A very cool, fun, and almost, well, it's dark, but it's almost a lighter story. Really cool. I enjoy that. That, to me, is like, ooh, very well done. And then at the end of this one, we finally get the culmination of that Patch Searcher story, where it's that Solomon Kane piece. And yeah, this one, issue 3 for me, was the one where suddenly the art was just banging in this story. This was where really I was like, whoa, we are seeing this fairy realm. We're getting more into this Welsh mythology piece that I referenced way back in part 1. You're getting more of a drawdown. And at the end of the day, Solomon has to make that final reconciliation in his own mind about how he's going to solve this. And it was almost in a moment of desperation, but you know what? Yeah, yeah. There will come a reckoning for that particular action. Now, I'm just calling it out here right now, and I'm going to say that's probably going to be well later into this whole thing, and maybe we'll see something about that in the Black Stone. I don't know. But definitely that's going to come with a reckoning. Very, very cool issue. And that bam, just knocked it out. All right, it's wrap-up time. Now, for those of you who watch the channel, you know that in these wrap-up times, here's the things that we do. We talk about things that got knocked out of the park, and then if there's a problem, I'm going to tell you, here's where we got to improve. And I brought the cup of water on this one. You know, when I'm bringing the cup of water in, because I think I might get thirsty, you know this is going to be a little bit long-winded. Now, when things are going to get long-winded, I got to warn you guys, if you can't handle about 10 minutes of the Old Red Fisher show, not fishing with Bob Azumi, that was rather high action. That was fast-paced show, I'm talking about the Red Fisher show, then you probably can't handle this segment. Here's the deal. The powerhouse issues that came out with 1, 2, and 3 just can't be questioned. This was phenomenal. The artistic talent that went into this thing and what they brought to the table was enough to take any Conan lover and any Conan aficionado to that next level of appreciation for everything Titan was doing. This was just, bar none, one of the best presentations of a new launch I've seen in a long, long time. I really enjoyed this material. Here's where things get a little weird. And this is where you guys out there, you're going to be the Conan loyal, are going to say, Tennessee fans, how dare ye? Just hear me out, okay? This has nothing to do with Titan. It has nothing to do with the actual work that they put into this. But the medium is screwing up the message. Hear me out. Here's what we love about Savage Sword of Conan, what we've always loved about Savage Sword of Conan. It's that gritty, visceral presentation. We love the fact that you have this nice high gloss image at the front, which is generally a painted cover that would just be shocking. Let's just call it as it is. And then you had your interior pages where there's this weird, dull newsprint, not nude print, although there were nudes in these, newsprint, where you had this sort of, what am I looking at? But that gnarly, visceral page was the thing that made you love the story. These were pulp-based stories. Pulp. Having it in Savage Sword of Conan in that medium just bled cool. These things would get out there, guys would read these while they're listening to their Black Sabbath, then they'd throw it in the back of their van with the teardrop window and they'd love it. And that'd just be the end of the story. It was just something that worked. Here's where we've got a challenge now though. It ain't working. It's working for the most part, don't get me wrong. But take a look at some of these images. Like I'm going to show you guys some images that were at the front. These were the front piece pinups that were in issues. I think it was 1 and 2. You guys can fact check me on this later. Here's the first one. This one's from Beilet, all right? And those of you who know, Beilet, in my mind, is one of the top characters in the Conan pantheon, and I'm very much looking forward to more Beilet. Just throwing that out there. Just throwing it out to the universe, right? You'll notice the image looks fantastic, but it's somewhat dulled. You'll notice a gray sheen. Now, many of you are going to say right off the bat, no, Tennessee fans, your photographic skills suck. Well, it's true, they do. But my photographic skills suck consistently. All right, buddy? So, if this sucks, then take a look at this. All right? It's not the image that sucks. It's this page. The page at the front, for some reason, is taking this gray sheen and throwing it over top of these beautiful images that I would love to see more of. I would love to see these brighter and more protected. There are other images, though, that are later in the book. Like here, I'll show you this one. This one was one that was, I think, in the middle of book 2. It's an absolutely gorgeous image, absolutely stunning. And this one, for some reason, survived better than the front piece. You'll notice there isn't that level of sheen over top of it. And I don't know, for some reason, that one just went well. There's actually an image at the end of book 2 of Solomon Kane. It was beautifully done. I'll show that image over here. And this is, again, a darker image, but this one doesn't have that sheen of gray to it. It came out with just a beautiful presentation. But those first two, for some reason, that sheen just wore the image right out. It's this weird thing, and I don't know if it's a paper issue, a printing issue, a whatever issue, but for some reason, those two images, which I really would have liked to have seen in brighter, more vivid sort of presentation, not that you can really do bright in a black and white little newsprint thing, just didn't hit it out there. And it's this strange thing. And this is what takes me to 2 points I'm going to make here. Number one, I'm going to be very clear. I am going to buy this trade paperback. And I'm going to buy this trade paperback for a very specific reason. My hope is that Titan will include every single piece that's within the first 3 issues of Savage Sword of Conan in the trade paperback. That was an incredibly long sentence with finger babbling. But that's what my hope is. My hope is they will have everything in it. That means I'm going to get the pinups. That means I'm going to get the letters section. That means I'm going to get the prose pieces. That means I'm going to get that piece in here that was the prelude to, the preview of City of the Dead, an interview with John Hawking. I want all that in that trade paperback. The reason why I'm going to buy that is so that when I look and I see that image, I'm going to see that Beilet image and it's going to be clear and crisp and it's going to actually jump off the page at me the way it should have in the magazine format. So that is good for Titan in a way, bad for me in a way because now I'm buying a trade paperback for stuff that I already own so I can see a couple images. But these images are important to me, so I'm going to do that. Here's the second thing that's a takeaway on this, and this is something I would like to see more of in further issues of Savage Sword. Really more of the open space. That image I showed you guys way back there where I was talking about, here, take a look at Carrie Nord's story. And I shared that one image with you, which I don't think spoiled anything. I'll put it up over here again. you'll notice how clean and crisp this looks. This is very much a juxtaposed sort of clean and crisp image to what you get for the rest of the stories in Savage Sword of Conan number 1, 2, and 3. This image is mostly open space. It's mostly blank. And the blank isn't there taking away story. The blank is building story, actually. The blank is telling a story. But the blank also turns around and makes that page so much more attractive to the eye, because you don't have any excess ink or anything on this newsprint that's smearing across and potentially becoming a problem. Again, it's strictly a production issue. I don't think there's anything Titan can do about this. I think this is more of a me thing than anything else. But I will say this, for some reason, the medium here is just slightly kicking the message. I wish there was someone we could fix that. I don't know. I'm not in comic production. You guys tell me. Well, let's wrap this thing up. I'll tell you, everybody, this was a really fun exercise for me in really getting all of this out of me. I've been building up my thoughts on this 3-part series so far for months, and not being able to talk about it was really something that was bugging me. Being able to actually sit here and say concretely, here's what I think, here's what you guys want to do. Whew, so much better. My soul feels lighter. Let's put it that way. Here's my thoughts on this thing just as a final summary. I'm hopeful the trade paperback has all of the contents of these particular issues 1, 2, and 3. I'm hopeful that when this comes out, it doesn't suddenly not have the prose pieces or the interviews or the front pieces or the pinups. That's particularly important. You want to make sure it has all of that in it, because those do add to the overall experience. If you're a Conan fan, if you're somebody that appreciates the character and you haven't read these yet, maybe getting the trade paperback, if it does have all that stuff, is totally the right choice. It might be the fastest, easiest route if you just grab everything in one space. And those pinups, if they're in there, may come out looking a heck of a lot better than your reading experience if you had the magazines. If we find out it's not going to have that, if you find out that you're not going to get the full experience from that trade paperback, then I would say, no, you're a Conan fan, go back, pick up the magazines. They're out there. They're not that hard to find. And when you do find them, you're going to have a much better reading experience of the overall story when you have these little snippets thrown in there. An anthology is an anthology for a reason. It's because it has the little breaks, it has the little distractions. That last piece in there that was by Alan Qua, I think in the last issue, just really screamed the fact, yes, this is an anthology. Look at this tiny story that did a really fun and exciting thing. It's cool. I think you'll enjoy this one. Everyone, that was our video for this week. I hope you enjoyed this one. You have yourself a great day. All right, it is Easter egg time. It is the end of the video, and it's time for us to sit down and have the impromptu. Here's what we're talking about today. Tennessee Fats. What's on your mind? Well, I tell you, we have a variety of things to talk about today. It's been a hot minute since we shot one of these things, so it's time to get a couple things. Wow, a bug just flew off of my studio window. That's a big-ass bug. What was it, a bat? And, this is one of those moments where typically I would just sit over there with Dracula and we'd just think about this for a while, because that may have actually been a day bat. You never know. It could have been. Anyways, we did a whole video today, and it was about nothing but Savage Sword of Conan. It was about magazines. And I gotta tell you, this was a great video for me, and I made the comment when we shot this one that this was sort of like one of those moments of just getting a phenomenal weight off of my soul, that I felt lighter. Because honestly, for the last 3 to 4 months, I've been sitting around saying, okay, when am I going to be able to say something about this? And the other thing was, I was internally fighting on this. I kept going through these issues 1 and 2, which had these major powerhouse stories in them, but then I would get to that piece that would continue on at the end. And as you guys know, one of the things I do is I always like to have a story and I like to have it done. So I get this sense in the back of my mouth where I was like, the taste just isn't, I'm not there yet. And it was funny because it's more of a mean thing, not a mean thing. I guess it is a mean thing, but it's more of a me thing than it is an anything else thing, because I can't think of anybody else that probably has that problem. This is probably just a me thing. It's that little OCD guy in the back of my head that just won't shut up again. But it's fun because these were magazines. Now, the funny part about this and the magazine piece of this brings us to what we're actually talking about today, and a really cool find, and sort of made me chuckle. One of the things that I found as a result of getting back into a newer Savage Sword of Conan title is when I'm going out to comic shops and shows, I'm spending more time digging through magazine bins. And there aren't a lot of magazine bins. This is an interesting thing that I've observed. When you go to a comic show, you will find tens of thousands, possibly millions of comic books sitting in that show. Millions of comic books. I wonder what that would actually look like. Let's go with hundreds of thousands. Hundreds of thousands is probably more applicable. Millions might be a bit much. Anyway, when you're there, you'll find all that. Then you'll find literally like 3 short boxes of magazines, like in the whole show. For some reason, magazines just aren't a thing. But every once in a while, you find some winners. And as a result of me getting into more Savage Sword and getting more of that material in my actual library, and actually as a result of me going through another project for another video that we'll be doing here on this channel, is that I've been digging through the old Savage Swords a little bit more, filling out my own Savage Sword of Conan run a fair amount. Well, in doing this, I've fallen down a rabbit hole. And I'll be very clear about this. Now, I know, Chris, heavy metal, I get it. I know it's out there. I've been buying it for years, but I've never really sort of gone whole hog into it. Well, I'm going more whole hog into it now. This is an interesting one because I'm finding now that when I'm out there and I'm digging around, I'm invariably saying, well, what do you got in the Savage Sword? Oh, heavy metal, you say. Oh, what's going on in there? And there's a couple other magazines that we won't discuss here. That'll be a topic for another video. They're not anything creepy or anything, but they're just, magazines that we need to talk about in another video for another actual sword and sorcery topic. But within that, heavy metal has been getting into the house, the Canadiana Fats, a fair amount. And this is an interesting one because you find the strangest things in heavy metal magazine. And I would encourage you guys that are out there that are into comics history, if you're out there and you're into that whole horror genre, or even just the sci-fi genre in addition to the whole sword and sorcery, Heavy Metal Magazine is a phenomenal source of reading material. The funny part about these magazines is you'll go to some places and you'll find these things priced at like $50 a book, which I don't know, it makes no sense to me. Because really, who's the buyers? I haven't run into anybody else other than, well, Chris, you and I, like, who else? I don't know anybody else out there doing it. But you go to other places and they're priced out, and for some reason they're always sitting with either an $8 or a $15 sticker on them. I don't know where 8 or 15 comes from, but for some reason it's always 8 or 15. Anyways, so when you're out there and you do find them and you're like, okay, well, this is the more reasonable price as opposed to the 50, you pick them up. I say, I found this issue. I'm going to put the image up over here and post editing there. And this is a funny one because this goes all the way back to 1983. And the image on the front of this is a Pan character, which actually is particularly telling and particularly apropos. Oh, I just used apropos. What was the word? Never mind. I'm not going to go down that road. Because Pan, as a character, was specifically referenced in the Patrick Zurcher story that was Solomon Kane
in issue 1 of this Savage Sword of Conan. They're kind of a neat thing. Now, you'll say, okay, well, Tennessee Fats, yes, it's a cool cover, but why are you excited about this? I'll tell you why I'm excited about this. Why I'm excited about this is sticking smack dab in the middle of this thing in high gloss color and beautifully presented is a Bernie Wrightson horror story. Yes, a Bernie Wrightson horror story sitting right in the middle of Heavy Metal Magazine. Now, I know Bernie Wrightson has appeared in other places in Heavy Metal Magazine. I'm aware of that. But this one I did not know about. This is one where I sort of went, because you know what you do is, here, the Heavy Metal, let's pretend we're looking at it together. I'd flip through this and I'd go to the front couple pages and I'd say, oh yeah, well, who's put art into this one and who's put writing into this one? Generally, Richard Corbin is in there. He's done some pretty cool stuff. But then you see a name jump out at you like Bernie Wrightson and you go, ooh, we're going to spend some time digging this. Now, we will not be showing a lot of images of Heavy Metal Magazine on this channel because here, we keep it PG, guys. And as many of you know, some of those early Heavy Metal magazines, they are a little risque. We do not read these with the youngins around, but it is a really fun source of some obscure material. There are other magazines out there that are actually really great sources of some obscure material that actually fits within our genre as well. For those of you who haven't dove into either eerie or creepy, I would encourage you to take some time to Wikipedia those titles, take a look at what's included within them and some of the contributors that worked on those. If you start searching through the contributors and looking at what their actual, let's just call it their works, their collected works, you'll start to find some stuff in there. I'm not telling you you need to go out there and get this stuff because it's going to build up a phenomenal Conan collection. It won't. But it will build up a phenomenally well-rounded collection of things that you might be interested in. So make sure when you're out there, don't just stick with the Savage Swords and the Conan sagas. Conan saga, by the way, we'll talk about it another day. Dive into some of the other stuff because you'll find some really cool stuff.